I always figured I was playing life by the rulebook. Work hard, save like a squirrel for winter, and definitely don't expect any handouts. That's the grown-up thing to do, right? At least that's the mantra I'd been chanting for the last decade while pulling 60-hour weeks at my marketing firm. Slowly, painstakingly, building a life for myself. My name is Erica Dawson. I'm 35, single, and up until 2 weeks ago, the proudest, most exhausted new homeowner you'd ever meet. It all started when my great-aunt Ruth passed. She left me a small inheritance, nothing that would let me retire to a private island, but just enough to finally push my savings over the finish line. See, since I was 25, I'd been on a hardcore budget. I'm talking living in a cramped shared apartment in Sacramento with roommates who rotated more often than my ancient, sputtering washing machine. I skipped the fancy vacations my colleagues bragged about, brewed my own coffee religiously, goodbye, $7 lattes, and became a master of the polite no thank you to countless nights out that would have derailed my savings plan. While others were dropping cash on Coachella tickets or designer handbags, I was quietly funneling every spare dollar into my down payment fund. It was a slow, often lonely grind, but the thought of having something truly mine kept me going. And then I hit it. $300,000. Enough to buy a charming little 2-bedroom bungalow outright in a quiet, up-and-coming neighborhood near East Sacramento. No mortgage, no soul-crushing debt, just mine. It's got character, which is a nice way of saying it has creaky floors, hopelessly outdated kitchen cabinets, and some truly hideous 1980s wallpaper. But I adore every imperfect inch of it. I even decided to tackle the renovations myself. YouTube. Tutorials became my new best friends. I was learning to spackle, to prime, to even consider plumbing, though I quickly decided some things are best left to professionals. Was midway through a particularly satisfying session of peeling stubborn sunflower borders off the living room wall, envisioning fresh paint and new beginnings, when my phone buzzed. It was my mom. "Erica, honey, you need to come over next Saturday. We're having a family meeting," she said, her voice dripping with that overly sweet tone she reserves for when she's about to spring something on me, something she knows I won't like. "A family meeting? What for?" I asked, pausing. Mid-peel, a strip of faded yellow vinyl dangling from my scraper. The scent of old adhesive and dust filled my nostrils. "Oh, it's a surprise," she said breezily. Too breezily. "Just be here by 4, and honey, could you pick up that divine chocolate cake from Sweet Juniper? You know, the one near your new place?" My internal alarm bells started a faint jingle. "Mom, what is this really about?" I pressed, trying to keep the suspicion out of my voice. "Just a little get-together, dear. Your brother Kyle and his fiancée Emily will be here, plus your aunts and cousins. It's just family time." That definitely set off more than a jingle. It was a full-blown siren. A surprise involving the entire extended family. This had ambush written all over it. "It's a surprise, Erica. Just be here," she repeated, a hint of steel now in her voice, and then she hung up. I rolled my eyes, a familiar frustration settling in. Whatever drama was brewing, it could wait. I had walls to scrape, a home to rebuild, a life to finally start living on my own terms. Unlike me, my younger brother Kyle has always seemed to glide through life on a cloud of parental approval and fortunate coincidences. He was the varsity athlete in high school, the golden boy, while I was holed up in the science club, meticulously cataloging slides. He dropped out of college after 1.5 years to pursue creative freedom, which mostly seemed to involve playing video games and occasionally strumming a guitar, while I powered through 4 grueling years of night classes to earn my marketing degree, all while holding down a full-time job. And somehow, our parents never seemed to mind his meandering path. It was always Kyle this and Kyle that. I remember countless instances. When we were kids, if we both had school events on the same weekend, say his baseball game and my debate tournament, guess which one they invariably showed up to? His. always his. When Kyle graduated high school, they threw a massive backyard bash, complete with a rented DJ and enough food to feed a small army. My college graduation? A quiet dinner at a strip mall diner, where the most exciting thing was the surprisingly decent onion rings. My 16th birthday present was a second-hand mountain bike with a slightly wobbly front wheel. The following year, for his 16th, Kyle got a used Jeep Cherokee. When I dared to question the disparity, my mom just smiled that placid smile and said, "Well, Kyle needs it, honey, to get to his band rehearsals and his part-time job at the surf shop." As if my internships across town and my weekend tutoring gigs to save for college weren't as valuable or didn't require reliable transportation. But I've never been one to cause a scene. I learned early on that complaining got me nowhere. So, I just put my head down, worked harder, and promised myself that one day I wouldn't need anyone's approval or handouts. That week leading up to the family meeting flew by in a blur of paint fumes, sawdust, and the satisfying ache of physical labor. I ripped out ancient stained carpets, discovered surprisingly decent hardwood underneath, and managed to prime the entire living room. Seeing those fresh, clean white walls, a blank canvas for my new life, made every blister and sore muscle feel utterly worth it. It was my space, my accomplishment. Saturday morning, true to my word, I stopped by Sweet Juniper and picked up Mom's favorite chocolate cake, a decadent, multi-layered affair with rich buttercream frosting. As I pulled into the driveway of the old family house, the house I grew up in, a knot of apprehension tightened in my stomach. The driveway and the curb were packed. Uncle Ray's old beat-up Subaru, Aunt Lisa's gleaming hybrid, even my cousin Mariah's bright yellow Beetle was squeezed in. This wasn't just a casual get-together. This was something big, something orchestrated. I took a deep breath, grabbed the cake box, plastered on a neutral expression, and headed inside. "Erica's here," Mom called out, swooping in to relieve me of the cake with the precision of a hawk. "Perfect timing, sweetie. We're just about to sit down." I scanned the living room, already buzzing with relatives. Kyle and his fiancée, Emily, were nestled side by side on the couch, all beaming smiles and shared glances. Dad was deep, in conversation with Uncle Ray, no doubt about sports or politics. The others were slowly drifting towards the dining room, a low hum of chatter filling the air. "What's going on?" I asked Kyle quietly as I passed him. He just grinned, that familiar, slightly smug grin. "You'll see." That cryptic response did absolutely nothing to help the knot forming in my stomach. Mom had set the dining table with the good china and the silver, the kind reserved for Thanksgiving or major announcements. Thanksgiving level serious. Whatever was coming, it wasn't casual. I took my seat beside my cousin Mariah, who, bless her, looked just as puzzled and slightly wary as I felt. "Do you know what this is about?" I whispered, leaning in. She shook her head, her eyes wide. "No clue. Your mom just called and said it was important family news and everyone had to be here." Dinner was passed around. Roast chicken, scalloped potatoes, roasted carrots. The usual Sunday dinner fare, but amplified. The cake I'd brought was placed in the center of the table like a crown jewel, waiting for dessert. The mood was polite. Conversations were light, almost forced, skirting around any topic of substance. But there was a tightness behind every smile, an undercurrent of anticipation. Everyone was waiting for something. I picked at my food, my appetite gone. Finally, once the plates were mostly full and the clinking of cutlery had subsided, my mom stood up, tapping her water glass with a spoon for attention. The room fell into an expectant silence. "I want to thank you all for coming today," she said, beaming a wide, almost theatrical smile. "We have some very exciting news to share." She looked directly at Kyle, her eyes shining with maternal pride. "Our Kyle and Emily are expecting." The table erupted into claps and cheers. Emily blushed prettily, her hand protectively on her barely there bump, and Kyle puffed up proudly, his arm around her shoulders. "And," Mom added, her voice even more buoyant, "they're getting married. We're already discussing venues, maybe something by the coast next spring." I smiled and applauded along with everyone else. Honestly, I was happy for them. A baby, a wedding. Those are good things, despite everything, despite the years. Of feeling like an afterthought, I wished them well. But then Mom shot a quick, meaningful glance at Dad, then back at Kyle and Emily, before her eyes landed squarely on me. Something in her expression, a calculated sweetness, made my stomach twist into a painful knot. "That's not the only news," she said, and the room fell quiet again, an almost breathless hush. "As many of you know, Erica recently bought her own home." She gestured towards me with a flourish. A few cousins nodded and mumbled belated, slightly awkward congratulations. I felt a flush creep up my neck. "She's 35, Mom continued, her voice taking on a slightly pitying tone. "Still single. No kids, no partner." My cheeks burned. What on earth did that have to do with anything? Where was this going? "But Kyle and Emily," she went on, her voice now bright and purposeful, "are about to start their family. They need a real home, a stable place to raise their child." I froze, a piece of chicken halfway to my mouth. I could feel every eye in the room on me. "Erica," she said, her voice now saccharine sweet, but with an unmistakable undercurrent of command. "This is your wonderful opportunity to be generous, to show your love and support for your brother and his new family." She paused for dramatic effect, her smile unwavering. "We think you should give your house to them." Silence, absolute deafening silence, broken only by the frantic thumping of my own heart. I blinked, waiting for the punchline, for someone to laugh and say, "Just kidding." It never came. "You can just go back to renting for a bit, dear," Mom said, breezily, as if discussing the weather. "You don't really need all that space by yourself, do you? It's perfect for a young family starting out. If you think that was bold, just wait until you hear what happened next. You might want to subscribe so you don't miss how this lovely family meeting turned into something no one, especially me, expected." I looked around the table, my mind reeling. Dad nodded solemnly beside Mom, his expression unreadable but clearly supportive of this insanity. Kyle finally met my gaze, his eyes holding an awkward, squirmy blend of guilt and what I can only describe as hopeful entitlement. "That's such a thoughtful idea, Erica," Aunt Lisa chirped brightly from across the table, completely missing, or deliberately ignoring, the stunned horror on my face. "Family should always look out for each other. That's what families do." A murmur of agreement rippled around the table from several other aunts and cousins. My cousin Mariah, to her credit, looked as aghast as I felt. This wasn't a suggestion. It was a meticulously planned ambush, and I was the unsuspecting target. You can't be serious," I finally managed to say, my voice low and sharp, cutting through the syrupy atmosphere. "Of course we are, dear," Mom replied, the warmth instantly vanishing from her tone, replaced by a steely resolve. "Kyle and Emily need a good, stable home. You have one, and you don't have a family of your own to fill it." I stood up so abruptly my chair screeched loudly against the hardwood floor, making several people jump. "You want me to just give them my house?" I repeated, my voice rising in disbelief. "The house I worked for a decade to afford? The one I just bought with my own savings and Aunt Ruth's inheritance? The money I scraped together by sacrificing for years?" "Don't be selfish, Erica," Dad snapped, his voice sharp and disapproving. "Think about your brother for once. He's starting a family." "Selfish?" I laughed, a short, bitter sound that held no humor. "Selfish? I've worked my entire adult life for that home. I didn't get any help. I didn't get handouts. I didn't have a Jeep bought for me. I earned it, every single penny. But, Kyle, Mom started, her voice taking on that wounded, manipulative tone. No, I said, louder now, finding a strength I didn't know I possessed. Absolutely not. The answer is no. Emily, on cue, put a hand on her barely there baby bump, her face crumpling dramatically as she started to sniffle. Kyle shot me a glare. That could have curdled milk, as if I'd just stomped on their non-existent wedding cake. How could you be so cold, Erica? Mom demanded, her voice rising to match mine. To your own brother? When he needs you? How can you ask me? To throw away everything I've built? I shot back, my hands clenching into fists. Why doesn't Kyle earn a house like I did? Why is it always on me to sacrifice for him? Whispers rippled around the table. Ungrateful. So difficult. She's always been like this, Mom hissed, her face flushed with anger, thinking only of herself. I am not giving up my house, I said, each word slow, deliberate, and crystal clear. That is final. And then it happened. Something so outrageous, so beyond the pale, that even now it feels surreal. My mother, her face contorted in a mask of fury, lunged for the beautiful chocolate cake, the one I had bought, her favorite, and with a surprising strength, she threw it. Directly at me. It hit me dead on. Chocolate cake and rich buttercream frosting splattered across my face, down the front of my new blouse, and onto the pristine dining room floor. The room froze. For a split second, there was utter silence, just the sound of a dollop of frosting slowly sliding down my cheek. No one rushed to help. No one gasped in horror at her behavior. They just stared. Some of them, I swear, looked almost satisfied. There, my mother said, her chest heaving. That's for your selfishness. I wiped the chocolate from my eyes with a trembling hand. I calmly picked up my handbag from the floor, turned without a word, and walked out. Behind me, the shouts began to rise, a chorus of condemnation. Ungrateful. Selfish cow. You're no daughter of mine. I somehow fumbled my way into my car, my hands shaking so badly I could barely fit the key into the ignition. Tears were streaming down my face, mixing with the smears of chocolate frosting that had already begun to dry and crack on my skin like some humiliating, sticky badge of shame. I drove home on autopilot, the interior of the car smelling faintly of chocolate and betrayal. I collapsed onto my thrifted couch, the same one I'd lovingly dragged from my old cramped apartment, and just sat there, numb, trying to absorb the sheer emotional wreckage of the evening. My brand new, freshly primed living room walls seemed to mock me with their pristine whiteness. My phone buzzed nonstop on the coffee table. Message after message, missed call after missed call. From Mom, from Dad, from Kyle. Erica, you're overreacting. This isn't a big deal. Just give them the house. It's the right thing to do for family. You've always been so selfish. Can't you think of anyone but yourself? Your pregnant future sister-in-law is in tears because of you. Your brother needs your help and you turn your back on him. I finally silenced the phone and tossed it across the room onto a pile of drop cloths, the thud satisfyingly dull. All my life, I'd been second place to Kyle. It was a bitter pill I'd swallowed countless times. When we were kids, he got the brand name Nike shoes. I got the clearance bin sneakers that fell apart after a month. He went to expensive basketball camps in the summer. I stayed home and read library books. For his 16th birthday, they hired a food truck and strung party lights across the backyard for a massive celebration. For mine, a few months earlier, a sheet cake from the grocery store, eaten in the kitchen with plastic forks. And now, they expected me to just hand over the only significant thing I'd ever truly built for myself, the culmination of a decade of relentless work and sacrifice. The sheer audacity was breathtaking. And then, a different memory surfaced, pushing through the fog of pain and anger. The house. Our grandmother's house. The one she had meticulously, fairly, left to Kyle and me equally in her will. We'd let our parents continue to live there after Grandma passed, out of kindness, out of a sense of familial duty. We never asked for rent, never made demands, never treated it like a financial asset. But legally, factually, we each owned half of that roof over their heads. That night, fueled by a potent cocktail of adrenaline and righteous fury, I dug out the manila folder from my battered filing cabinet. Inside, nestled among old tax returns and utility bills, was Grandma Ruth's will. As clear as day, typed out in stark black and white, 50-50 ownership of the property, split between me, Erica Dawson, and my brother, Kyle Dawson. They were, in essence, guests in a home they didn't own. And that's when I knew what I had to do. The ground had shifted. They had drawn the battle lines. The next morning, the sting of betrayal still fresh, I was halfway through dialing the number of a highly recommended real estate lawyer when my phone pinged with a Facebook notification. I hesitated, then opened it. My blood ran cold. My mother had posted publicly for all her friends and our extended family to see. Sometimes your own child breaks your heart with their selfishness. Our Erica refused to help her brother and his pregnant fiancé when they needed her most. Some people just don't understand the meaning of family. The comment section was even worse. Aunt Lisa. I was there. Erica was ice cold. It was shocking. A distant cousin. Keeping a whole house to herself when her brother is starting a family? Disgusting. Another relative. So ungrateful after everything her parents have done for her. I nearly dropped the phone. My hands were shaking. Again. But this time, it wasn't just from shock. It was from a white-hot rage. Not a single person in that comment thread, not one, mentioned the part where my mother hurled a cake at my face. No one questioned why a 35-year-old woman who had worked her fingers to the bone for a decade should be expected to give up the home she'd just purchased, the home that represented her security and independence. As I scrolled through, the venomous comments, each one landed like a punch to the gut. And the worst part? My mom was liking them, even replying with little martyr-like comments like, "We truly tried to raise her better than this. It's a sad day." It wasn't just a post. It was a deliberate, calculated smear campaign designed to isolate me and pressure me into submission. That's when something inside me finally, irrevocably, snapped. Whatever lingering threads of loyalty or familial obligation I had felt, they broke. If they wanted to play dirty, they clearly forgot one crucial detail. I still owned half their roof. I picked up my phone, my previous hesitation gone, replaced by a steely resolve. I searched for a real estate attorney near East Sacramento. The first name that popped up with glowing reviews was Blackwell Law Office. "Blackwell Law, this is Jenna. How can I help you?" A calm, professional voice answered. "I need to speak to someone about property rights and a partition sale," I said, my voice surprisingly steady, focused. 2 hours later, I sat across a polished mahogany desk from Jeremy Blackwell, a composed man in his late 40s with keen, intelligent eyes and a quiet intensity that immediately put me at ease. I laid it all out. The years of favoritism, the new house, the ambush, the cake assault, the Facebook humiliation, and most importantly, Grandma Ruth's will. He listened patiently, occasionally jotting down a note, his expression thoughtful and unreadable. "So just to be clear, Ms. Dawson," he said when I'd finished, tapping his pen lightly on a legal pad, "you and your brother inherited your grandmother's home, 50-50. You have graciously allowed your parents to live there rent-free for several years. And now, after they attempted to coerce you into handing over your own recently purchased property, you want to understand your legal options regarding the inherited house." "Yes," I replied, feeling a weight lift just by articulating it all to an impartial third party. "I'm not looking for revenge, Mr. Blackwell. I'm looking for clarity, for boundaries, for a way to disentangle myself from this situation. reviewed the copy of the will I'd brought. "It's quite straightforward," he said after a few minutes. "You own half the property. You have every legal right to force a sale, or to require your brother to buy out your share at current market value. Your parents, as non-owners, have no legal standing to prevent this." "What's the first step?" I asked, my heart rate picking up slightly. This was real. "I'll draft the formal notice of intent to sell today," he said calmly. "Do it," I said without a moment's hesitation. The next few weeks were a strange mix of liberation and anxiety. I threw myself into my bungalow renovations, painting trim, tearing out the old, musty carpet, sanding floors. The physical work helped to silence the noise in my head, the recriminations, the guilt that occasionally tried to creep in. 5 days after my meeting with Jeremy, my doorbell rang insistently. Through the peephole, I saw them: Mom, Dad, Kyle, and Emily, clustered on my small porch, their faces grim. I didn't open it. "Erica, we know you're in there," Mom barked, her voice sharp and loud enough for the neighbors to hear. "We need to talk about this ridiculous letter from your lawyer." Dad's voice thundered behind hers. "You have no right to do this. This is still our home." I calmly took out my phone and hit record. "You ungrateful little brat," Mom screamed, her voice cracking with fury. "After all we've done for you, this is how you repay us?" And still, I didn't open the door. "You're trying to make your pregnant brother homeless," Emily wailed, her voice a theatrical sob. "This is low, Erica, even for you," Kyle added sharply, his golden boy charm entirely absent. I recorded every insult, every guilt trip, every veiled threat they hurled at my front door for nearly 15 minutes. Then, finally, silence. They retreated. I immediately sent the audio file to Jeremy. He called back within the hour. "This qualifies as harassment, Erica," he said, his voice calm but firm. "We can certainly request a restraining order if this continues. But honestly, this recording only strengthens your position. It demonstrates their unreasonable behavior and attempts at intimidation." A week later, Jeremy called again. Their lawyer reached out. They want to mediate. The mediation was scheduled for the following Monday at Jeremy's office. I arrived early, wearing a navy pantsuit I used to save for major client presentations. My armor. Jeremy met me in the lobby with a calm, reassuring nod. "Remember, you're well within your rights here. Don't let them rattle you." My parents, Kyle and Emily, arrived a few minutes later with their lawyer, a harried-looking man who seemed vaguely embarrassed by his clients. Mom shot me a venomous glance and muttered, "Traitor," under her breath as she passed. I ignored her. The mediator, a neutral third party, began by summarizing the facts. Their lawyer launched into a rambling speech about family values, claiming that forcing a sale would be cruel, disruptive, and emotionally devastating for his clients. Jeremy calmly waited his turn, then submitted copies of the Facebook post and a transcript of the harassment recording as evidence of their behavior. You could see the mediator's expression shift, just slightly. 2 tense hours of back and forth between the lawyers in separate rooms passed. Then, both lawyers returned. Their side had a proposal: sell the house, split the proceeds equally between Kyle and me, as the will clearly dictated. Mom broke down. "Please, Erica," she begged. Actual tears streaming down her face this time, though they looked suspiciously performative to me. "We're your family. I'm so sorry about the cake, I lost my temper." I looked at her, at my father's stony face, at Kyle's sullen pout, at Emily's downcast eyes. I remembered every slight, every overlooked achievement, every time I'd been made to feel small or secondary. The cake was just the rotten cherry on top of a lifetime of imbalance. "The house will be sold," I said, my voice clear and unwavering. "That is final." Jeremy nodded and began drafting the agreement. The anger radiating from my family's side of the table was almost palpable, a suffocating heat. But for the first time in my life around them, I felt nothing. Just a cool, calm sense of resolve. The next 2 months were a blur of legal paperwork, real estate showings, and the quiet satisfaction of reclaiming my power. The house, situated in a desirable neighborhood, sold quickly in a hot market. After all the fees and commissions, Kyle and I each received a check for $175,000. We never spoke directly again. Everything went through our respective lawyers. Jeremy later told me my parents were, predictably, furious about the outcome but were completely powerless. They'd been living rent-free for years, benefiting from Grandma's foresight and our subsequent inaction. That era was officially over. What will they do now? I asked Jeremy during our final meeting. A flicker of something. Not quite. Guilt, but perhaps a residual sense of responsibility, stirring within me. Your brother used his share as a down payment on a smaller house further out of the city, he replied, consulting his notes. Your parents will be moving in with him and Emily. They've secured a mortgage for the remainder. I nodded, a strange mixture of relief and a distant, detached sadness washing over me. I had, in effect, forced my parents out of the home they'd known for decades. But then, I remembered the sting of the frosting on my face, the screaming at my door, the public humiliation of the Facebook post. They made their choices, I said quietly, more to myself than to him. And you, Erica? Jeremy asked, a hint of a smile playing on his lips. Any plans for your share? Investment portfolio, I said promptly. I'd already started working with a financial advisor, diversifying into a mix of stocks, bonds, and REITs. My future finally was my own to build, on my own terms. Smart, he said, standing to shake my hand. Well, unless there's anything else, Ms. Dawson, our business here is wrapped up. It was a pleasure helping you stand your ground. Back, at my little bungalow, I looked around. The hardwood floors, painstakingly sanded and refinished by yours truly, gleamed. The new kitchen cabinets I'd installed myself were functional and bright. The walls were painted in serene, calming colors. Light streamed in everywhere. It was small, yes, but it was mine. Every nail, every coat of paint a testament to my own resilience. My phone rang. It was my coworker and friend, Rachel. Erica, how are you holding up? Heard the sale finally went through. I am okay, actually, I said, surprised by the truth in my own words. Better than okay. The money's in my account. The legal stuff is over. And your family? She asked gently. Little messy, I admitted with a wry chuckle. Definitely wasn't invited to Kyle's shotgun wedding. He and Emily are expecting any day now, apparently. Rachel hesitated. Are you okay with that? You know, not meeting your nephew or niece? Them potentially growing up thinking you're the villain of the story? I sighed, swirling the ice in my water glass. Honestly, Rachel, maybe they never really saw me as family in the way I saw them. Maybe I was always just a convenient resource, the responsible one they could lean on or blame. I knew this would probably happen. My parents have spent their entire lives putting Kyle first. They weren't about to develop sudden self-awareness in their 60s. After hanging up, I poured myself a glass of crisp white wine and stepped out onto my small, newly built deck. The Sacramento sky was streaked in warm orange and fading pink. 6 months ago, the idea of being completely estranged from my entire family would have crushed me, sent me into a spiral of guilt and self-doubt. Now I felt peace. A quiet, profound peace that settled deep in my bones. My phone pinged. A text from a mutual acquaintance. Emily had the baby. A boy, 7 lbs 6 Oz. Everyone's healthy. I stared at the message, waiting for a wave of, Emotion, grief, anger, regret, longing. Nothing came. Just a quiet, neutral recognition, like hearing about a stranger's milestone. They were all under one roof now: Kyle, Emily, the new baby, and my parents. Living in a house funded by Kyle's half of Grandma Ruth's legacy, carrying a mortgage they'd likely be paying well into their retirement. But I didn't feel bad for them. They had made it abundantly clear, time and time again, that I was never the daughter, the sister, or the aunt they cherished. I was the resource, the backup plan, the emergency fund. The one who was supposed to give and expect nothing in return. Back inside my beautifully imperfect, wonderfully mine apartment, the calm silence greeted me like an old friend. Some would call it lonely. I called it freedom. On my bookshelf, carefully, dusted and prominently displayed, sat one small, unassuming box of old photographs, just Grandma Ruth and me. Smiling at a forgotten birthday party, squinting into the sun on a beach trip, her arm around my shoulder. She saw us equally, Kyle and me. She tried to balance the scales with her will. And I was finally, done, burning myself to keep others warm. If you've ever been the one expected to give everything and ask for nothing in return, if you've ever had to fight for your own space, your own life, against the people who were supposed to love you unconditionally, tell me about it in the comments. I stood up for myself finally. It wasn't easy, but it was necessary. Subscribe if you believe that setting boundaries isn't selfish, it's survival. Let's support each other, share our stories, and remind the world that quiet strength, the strength to say no, deserves just as much respect as any other kind.